Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we study a short chapter, which is chapter 29 in the first book of Samuel, that's Shmuel Aleph. And this chapter serves to help set up the situation that's going to culminate in a major battle, which is, I guess this is a little bit of a spoiler, but which culminates in the death of Saul of Shaul. And if you remember, we spent a couple times, several podcasts discussing that chapter of Saul's visit to the necromancer prior to the battle, and we had many different explanations. So we have a good sense of the state of mind of the king as he's about to lead his people in a major battle, and a good sense of his state of mind as he reached the end of his reign and the end of his life. Now we're going to go focus back on David. If you recall, David had sought shelter among the land of the Philistines, specifically under King Achish of Gath. And David, originally the people there were suspicious of him, but over time he managed to earn his trust. Even though Achish thought that he was fighting against his enemies, while David was really going out on raids against enemies of the people of Israel. But he managed to fool Achish into thinking that he was loyal and that he had defected completely from Saul. Presumably Achish also knew and understood that Saul and David were on the outs. And now David is marching to battle with Achish. That's where we left him. And we knew that David was stuck in a very difficult and thorny situation. On the one hand, he needs to continue to demonstrate and pretend as if he is a loyal Philistine, loyal to the Philistines, while in the bottom line is David is not loyal to the Philistines. He is an Israelite and the future king of Israel, and David, is now stuck in a situation where he may need to fight against his own people. Or either that, or he'll have to make that choice and demonstrate that he truly isn't loyal to Achish, and Achish is where he was seeking refuge from Saul. So he's stuck in a really difficult bind, but we're about to see how he gets lucky, so to speak, and gets out of this mess. And that's what we're going to read about today. So Vayikpetzu Filishtim es kol machaneim afeka. The Philistines had gathered all of their camps. All of their armies were laid out at Afek. Yisrael chonim, and the people of Israel had encamped ba'ayin asher b'Yisrael, at a spring which is in Israel, in Jezreel. So we have laid out the locations where the opposing armies had put down their camps. V'sarnei Filishtim ovrim l'me'os v'alafim, and the Sarne are Plishtim, are the officers, or really the lords, or the people in charge of the Philistines, the nobles. There was each one, they were passing. In other words, they were all coming from wherever they were coming from, their places, and entering the area, the battlefield, and they were passing through with hundreds of soldiers and thousands of soldiers. David and David and his men ovrim ba'achrona im Achish were coming at the end with Achish. So Achish was one of the last groups to arrive and get ready for battle with the rest of the Philistines. Vayomer sarei Filishtim, and the officers of the Philistines said, Moha iver mela, what are these Hebrews doing here? Right? Who are these Jews here? So Achish said to the Philistine officers, "Hello, Zed David. This is David, Eved Shaul Melech Yisrael. He was the servant of Saul, the king of Israel. Asher haya iti ze yamim o ze shanim. He's been with me for a while, for a year or two, right? V'lo matzasi vo me'uma, and I have not found any fault in him. In other words, he'd been completely faithful to me. Miyom naflo ad hayom hazeh, from the day that he fell out with Saul until today. So he's reminding them that you don't have to be afraid of them, right? He, number one, fell out with his king, so he's no more loyal to the king. In fact, he's an enemy of Saul, just like we are. And he's demonstrated very clearly and very well. He's demonstrated his loyalty to me, and I haven't even found any reason at all to be suspicious. So Vayiktifu alav sarei Philistine, but the officers of the Philistines got very angry with him. Vayomer lo sarei Philistine, and they said to him, Hashev es aish, banish this man, get rid of this, send him away. V'yashov al makomo, let him go back to his place asher hivkarato sham, where you appointed him there. Let him go back to the home front, right? We don't want him on the battlefield. V'lo yeredi manu b'milchama, he shouldn't come to war with us. V'lo yeh lanu l'satan b'milchama, we don't want him to become an enemy of ours in the war. Uvamei Yisrat says ze el Adonav. And, yeah, it's true that he had a falling out with Saul, but what would be the bet? Presumably he would want to fall back in with Saul. So what better way would there be for him to get back into favor with his king? But if not by taking off the heads of these people, pointing to their legions of soldiers, saying, David would quickly and easily lop off a couple of heads and bring them to Saul, and Saul would say, "Yay, now you're mine. You're with me again." So that's clearly, when they talk about with the heads, this is clearly a hint back to when David took the head of Goliath, of Goliath, back in the early days. So here you kind of get the sense that, of course, we're about to see how David gets sent away, and he avoids this very sticky situation of having to choose between demonstrating his loyalty to Achish, who's been hosting him, versus fighting his own people. But we also get a sense for, had Saul behaved differently, had Saul been less arrogant, how David could have been such an important ally, and how this battle may have done different. That a true king who thinks of his people rather than himself could have used David as you can think of all kinds of scenarios how Saul could have used David in this situation to help win this battle. And there's many different ways this could have played out. But of course, Saul is not going to think about using David. Saul is still going to imagine David as his enemy rather than his ally, and remain stuck in his arrogance, and remain stuck in his inability to recognize that it was time for him to step down as the leader. Now, so what happens? Halo Zed David, in other words, the people are still talking. The officers are still talking to Achish, and they say, "Isn't this the same David asher ya'anu lo b'mecholos lemar, that they would sing about him and when they would dance in circles and sing Hikasha ol ba'alafov v'David b'rivosav," that Saul has killed with his thousands and David has killed with his tens of thousands. In other words, he's just saying about the two of them. The two of them are together. What do you think? You think he's going to all of a sudden change his mind? He's all of a sudden he's different? Of course not. We can't afford to have enemies within our ranks. So therefore, Achish saw that he is a losing proposition. There's no way he'd be able to convince them, and it would cause serious disagreements in the ranks before an important battle. So Achish called to David, Vayomer Love, and he said to him, Chai Adonai, by the life of God. Now this is fascinating because Achish swears by God rather than swearing by his own Philistine God with a small g. So Achish had apparently related to David and talked to him talking in the language of an Israelite, referring to David's God. Ki yashorato, I know that you are a proper person and honest. V'tov be'enai, and you are a good person in my eyes. In my eyes, I know you're a good guy. Tzeitzcha uvoecha iti b'machaneh, and I'm sorry, v'tov be'enai, and it would be good for me, and I would like you to go out and come with me in the camp in battle. I want you to fight with me. I have not found anything bad about you from the day you came to me until today. But in the eyes of the nobles and the leaders, the other ones, right, they don't like you. So Viata now shuv v'lech b'shalom. Go back to Gat. Go back to where we were staying before, and go in peace. V'lo ta'aser ra be'enei sarnei Filishtim. And so that you shouldn't do anything bad in the eyes of the officers or the nobles of the Philistines. So Vayomer David el Achish. So David has to feign, pretend that he's upset about this, like he's insulted. While meanwhile he's probably inside quite relieved that he's just got saved from getting stuck in a really difficult situation. So he says, but in order to continue his ruse, he has to pretend he's insulted. So, what have I done? What kind of fault have you found in your servant from the day that I came before you until today? That I shouldn't be allowed to go and wage war against the enemies of my master the king. So Vayan Achish Vayomel David, and Achish goes and comforts him and says to David, Yadati, I know, ki tovata be'enai, you are good in my eyes, ki malach Elohim, like an angel of God. Wow, quite a compliment. Achsarei Filishtim amru, however, it's not up to me. The heads of the Philistines, they said, Lo yalei imanu b'milchama, that he should not come to war with us. V'ata, and now hashkem baboker, I guess it was near the end of the day, so, sleep the night. When the morning comes, wake up, v'avdei adonecha asher ba'u itach, and you and your servants that came with you, the men that you command, v'shkamtem baboker, you all wake up together, v'or lochem, it will be light for you, so you can travel v'alechu, and travel away. Vayashkem David, so David got up, huvan ashav, he and his men, laleches baboker, to go in the morning, l'shuv el eretz Pilishtim, to go back to the land of the Philistines, u'Filishtim alu Yisrael, and the Philistines continued to go towards Yisrael, which again is where the Israelites were camped at the spring that was in Israel, and the Philistines continued their march to wage battle against the people of Israel. So now we have, we almost had an extremely strange and sticky situation where David would have been camped with the Philistines in their war against the people of Israel, but instead we have Saul and his men getting ready for battle, and the Philistines marching towards them into battle, and David goes off to the side back, and we're going to read a little bit more about David in the next chapter, and some interesting events that happened with David while this other battle that he's not involved in is going on. So thank you for studying, of course, together chapter 29. Looking forward to studying chapter 30 as we approach the end of the first book of Samuel, and as we approach the end of Saul's career. We still have some interesting chapters to read about the end of the career of the first king of Israel, King Saul. Thank you so much for studying. Looking forward to studying again together.